Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Story Highway, where every story is a journey across the heart. Tonight's tale is called The Lighthouse Keeper's Promise, a story about love, loss, duty, and the kind of light that never fades. On the remote coast of Maine stood an old lighthouse called Windermere Point, its white tower rising above the cliffs like a guardian watching over the restless Atlantic. The waves crashed endlessly against the rocks below, carrying whispers of sailors and storms long gone. For 40 years, Samuel Reed had been its keeper, a quiet man whose life had been carved by salt, wind, and memory. His hands were rough, his face weathered, but his eyes still held a steady calm, like the light he tended every night. People in the nearby fishing village often said he was born to belong to the sea, though they didn't know the truth, that he had once hated it, ever since it took away the only person he had ever truly loved. Years ago, when Samuel was young, he'd met Eliza, a violinist who came to the coast every summer to paint and play music by the cliffs. She was all sunlight and laughter, the kind of person who made even a storm feel like a song. He was shy, a lighthouse apprentice who rarely spoke, but she drew him out with kindness. They'd spend evenings on the rocks, her violin echoing across the waves while he told her about the stars and the ships guided by his light. They married by the sea, in a ceremony so simple that the gulls themselves seemed to bless them. But one winter night, a storm rose without warning. Eliza was returning by ship from a nearby town where she'd gone to play a concert. Samuel kept the lantern burning through the gale, but the ship never came. When morning broke, fragments of the vessel washed ashore, and her violin, cracked but whole, lay at his feet. From that day on he made a vow. As long as he lived, he would never let the light go out, so that no one else would lose their way as he had. The years blurred like waves. He rose before dawn, fixed the machinery, climbed the spiral stairs, and wound the great clock that turned the beacon. He spoke little, but wrote letters to Eliza every month, letters he never mailed, tucked instead into a weathered chest in his quarters. He became a legend in the village, the man who never left the lighthouse. Tourists came, ships changed, radios replaced the bell system, and the government offered to automate Windermere Point, but Samuel refused. "Machines don't make promises," he told the inspector. "Men do." Every evening at dusk, he polished the lens until it shone like glass caught in fire, whispered her name, and struck the match that kept his promise alive. One autumn, the storms grew fiercer than ever before. The sea boiled gray, and the gulls flew inland, a sure sign of trouble. Samuel's joints ached from age, but he climbed the tower anyway. He knew the rhythm of storms like a heartbeat. This one felt different, almost alive. As night fell, lightning clawed the horizon, and the foghorn bellowed low and mournful. Peering through the glass, he saw the faint outline of a fishing boat fighting the waves. Its lights flickered out. Their radio must have failed. Without hesitation, Samuel rang the brass emergency bell by hand and began signaling with the backup lamp, each flash a desperate message. Follow the light. Follow home. The storm roared back, tearing shingles from the roof and shaking the tower's frame. He held his post, soaked and trembling, until the boat turned toward the beam. When it finally reached the harbor, safe, Samuel smiled and collapsed beside the lens, his hand still on the lever. When the storm cleared at dawn, rescuers climbed the spiral stairs and found him lying peacefully, eyes closed, face toward the sea. The light was still burning, its reflection glimmering across his weathered face. On the desk lay an envelope, yellowed with time, addressed in steady handwriting, "To whoever keeps the light next." Inside were pages of notes, instructions about the lamp, tide charts, and a final message written in fading ink. If love leaves, keep the light anyway. It will find its way back. A month later, a young woman named Clara Monroe arrived from the city to take over the position. She was quiet, thoughtful, and had once been a musician before life, too, had dimmed her spark. She read Samuel's notes every night, his words like a map for her soul. On her first winter morning, as dawn broke over the cliffs, she unpacked her old violin and began to play in the lantern room, a soft melody that carried down to the sea. The villagers below paused and listened. They swore the ocean seemed calmer that day, as though the waves themselves were listening. Some said that at sunset, when the beam swept across the water, you could see two shadows standing close together in the light, holding hands. Years passed. The lighthouse was eventually automated, but the townsfolk insisted the keeper's quarters remain untouched. Fishermen still dipped their flags twice when passing Windmere Point, once for safety and once for Samuel Reed, the man who kept the light burning even when love seemed lost to the sea. On quiet evenings, when the tide was low, people claimed to hear violin notes mingling with the wind, faint, distant, but filled with warmth. They said that was Eliza, playing to the man who had waited faithfully beyond all storms. And so, friends, this was the Lighthouse Keeper's Promise, a story about devotion, memory, and the kind of faith that outlasts time itself. It reminds us that love doesn't disappear. It changes its form and keeps guiding us in ways we can't always see. Just as Samuel kept his light for Eliza, we too can keep ours for those we love, not in hope of their return, but as a way to keep the darkness from winning. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Story Highway, because here, every story finds its light.